Hello everybody, it's Emma and welcome back to my channel. I'm very excited to talk to you today about plant-based meats. And this is because I talk a lot about how I went vegan to save the planet. I give a whole bunch of different videos about why eating vegan is better for the planet, but is it really? No, I'm kidding, it is. But is eating plant-based meats better than eating animal-based meats in regards to the environment? Let's discuss. We're mostly going to be comparing, plant-based meats to animal-based meats, but we're also going to be talking about plant-based meats versus a whole foods plant-based diet. Because looking at just packaging alone, obviously eating whole foods is going to be better than eating packaged processed foods. So we're going to dive into all that throughout this video. And honestly, I've never really known much about the plant-based meats industry myself, so this was a very interesting research topic for myself to look at, and I learned a lot, and I hope that you learn a lot from this video too. So I made this original video linked up here about why eating vegan is better for the planet. Honestly, just assuming that everyone would kind of eat like me, which is mostly whole foods plant-based and mostly package free or in cans or cardboard. And I know that's not possible. I know it's not possible for everyone to eat vegan, and I have a video outlining that as well, talking about food deserts and things like that. And even once someone does go vegan, I know it's really hard for people to shop plastic free or package free entirely. I also don't shop package free. I've made a few videos about that. It's really hard to shop plastic free, package free in my region, and I know I'm not the only one. But something else to note too, I still manage to eat mostly whole foods plant-based, even if it does come in packaging, and I try to avoid these processed meats for health reasons. They're not the healthiest, but also now, looking at the environmental side, I was also inspired to make this video because of a post I saw by Queer Brown Vegan on Instagram. I'll just show you some of the slides right here. But he made this really great, infographic talking about all this stuff. And it was really interesting to me that he dove into this, and I wanted to research more for myself. So let's first talk about packaging. Obviously, I know you know, if you're vegan, that almost all vegan meat replacements come in packaging, but then again, so do animal products. There's really no real win or loss here. They're pretty much equal, but there is something though to know about plant-based meats. With animal meats, I don't know what else to call them. I feel like calling them that is weird, but whatever. There's a lot of foodborne illnesses and diseases that come with that. So they have to be wrapped in a lot more plastic. They typically all come in a styrofoam tray with a little absorber thing in the bottom to catch any liquids. And then they're also wrapped in thin plastic. None of this can be recycled, or it's very, very hard to recycle, or just not profitable. So that's the good news with plant-based meats, is there's not all these different, diseases you can catch from plants as you would be able to catch from animals. So a lot of brands have the ability to use cardboard instead. So for example, Beyond Meat, their sausages come in a cardboard tray wrapped in plastic. Of course, you can't recycle the plastic, but that cardboard is still recyclable once you wipe off any excess food material. And I've also seen things like vegan nuggets and other sorts of things like that come in a cardboard box without any plastic involved. So yes, packaging still exists with plant-based alternatives, but it seems to be a little bit better than their animal-based counterparts. Next, let's talk about emissions, everyone's favorite topic. Like I talked about in the other video, animal agriculture makes up about 14.5% of global greenhouse gas emissions, according to the UN. Beef and dairy cattle alone make up 65% of all emissions coming from animal ag. So by cutting out some beef and replacing it with plant-based meats, you'll reduce your emissions, right? Actually, yes. So in comparison, beef ranges anywhere from 10.2 to 48.5 kilograms of CO2 per kilogram of beef, while plant-based meats range from about 3.2 to 3.5 kilograms of CO2 emissions per kilogram of plant-based meats. So as you can see, just by those numbers alone, it is considerably less emissions from eating plant-based meats. Imagine though, if you were eating whole food plant-based, how much lower those emissions would be. And looking at these emissions, this is everything from making the feed for the cattle, harvesting the feed, turning it into feed, transporting it to the cattle, you know what happens there, transporting the meat to the consumer, and all that sort of stuff. The plant-based meats, pretty much the same, harvesting, turning it into the meat, but then you cut out the middleman, aka the cow, and then you just send that food straight to the humans instead of the food to the humans. So by cutting out the middleman, you're reducing a lot of emissions there, as well as a lot of production. And we'll see that too as well with land use and water use in a bit. So this can reduce greenhouse gas emissions anywhere from 30 to 90% per kilogram of product between beef and plant-based products. Okay, moving on to land use. And honestly, this is a real kicker with animal ag. Not only do cows, in this instance, take up a large amount of room, because they require more food to be grown, this means the land use is much higher. Raising animals for us to eat requires about 77% of the world's agricultural land, but cows only equate to 17% of our food. That's insane. They're using 3/4 of the land, but less than 1/5 of what we eat. But this is where animal-based meats and plant-based meats are kind of tied for nutrition, and where it gets a little complicated. When considering amino acid content and nutrient density, animal foods are more readily able to meet our standards for these nutrients. So when comparing land use to nutrients we get from this land, the two types of meat might be more equal. But if you're looking in terms of actual land use and not just nutrients per land use, plant-based meats win here by a lot. Plant-based meats require anywhere from 47 to 99% less land than animal-based meats. Moving right along to water, just like with land, animal ag consumes most of the world's water as well. In fact, animal ag requires 1/3 of all water used for all agriculture, not just animal ag. And just like with land use, animals require a lot of water to drink and then of course to make all of the food that they require. Like I already mentioned, it takes a lot more water and a lot more food for a 1 or 2 ton cow than it does for a 100 to 200 pound person. Animal ag requires about 36 to 74 trillion gallons of water per year in the US alone. And most of this water just goes towards making their food. I've said this so many times, so cutting out the middleman, the cow, and just taking their food and feeding it to us, we could feed so many more people than by taking all this food, way more food to feed a cow, to feed to less people. All this considered, plant-based meats use anywhere from 72 to 99% less water than animal meats. Now let's talk about pollution. So I first heard of eutrophication in Shel Bizzle's pretty recent video about eutrophication as well as dead zones in the ocean. Eutrophication occurs when nitrogen and phosphorus run off into waterways and eventually into the ocean, leading to excess algal blooms, which in turn suffocate aquatic life, leading to dead zones. And guess who makes most nitrogen and phosphorus? Animals. So this is largely in part due to animal agriculture and their waste. And not to mention all the pesticides and herbicides that go into growing their food. Yes, of course, plant-based meats still require fertilizers, herbicides, pesticides to be used, but they require a lot less. I'm just gonna keep reiterating here for all the vegan haters. Because we eat less than a cow, we don't require as much food, so we don't require as much fertilizer. The less we eat animals, the less of their waste ends up in the ocean, as well as the less fertilizers, pesticides, herbicides that need to be used. Plant-based meats actually reduce pollution of this kind by 51 to 91%. And right along these lines is antibiotics. I actually made a video about antibiotic resistance early in the pandemic up here. So it's a pretty old video, but I think the information is still really good and very interesting to consider. So animal agriculture uses about 70% of antibiotics in the US alone. So by eating more plant-based, even eating plant-based meats can reduce this as well. And I threw this into this category because antibiotics can actually end up being pollution because of all of the animal waste that just sits there. It can seep into our ground and into our water. So now that we got all the facts laid out, are plant-based meats really sustainable? Yes, when comparing them to animal products. Again, we're gonna break this down a little bit more. So I think making the switch is a fantastic first step. If you're new to veganism and you're more comfortable eating plant-based sausages and burgers and nuggets, go for that. Because as we just saw, this is a huge step for the environment. But just like with everything, I've talked about this in so many of my recent videos, we shouldn't be over-consuming anything. And right along with that is we shouldn't be over-consuming plant-based meats. And that's because if someone eats plant-based meats at every single meal, that's still so much land, water, and pollution coming from that, and you would probably see less if you were eating a whole foods plant-based diet. So yes, it's better, but it's still not the best. They're not really as sustainable as we think, I suppose. And honestly, I think it's kind of obvious with the packaging, all of the transportation that goes into making these products, and so forth. So if you're looking to achieve the lowest carbon footprint from your diet or just lower it in general, you should look for a whole foods plant-based diet if you have access to that. But this also means you should try to shop locally and as plastic free as possible. Now, shopping locally isn't the end all be all of zero waste either. I want to explore that in the future, but the key here is eating seasonally. So for example, right now we're still at the back end of winter in Okinawa, meaning it's the season for pumpkins, greens, and other things like that. And then mango season is in the summer, and pineapple and other sorts of fruit. So if I were to buy a pineapple or a mango right now, it's either being shipped thousands of miles or it's grown locally-ish in a greenhouse greenhouse or using other sorts of methods like that, meaning more environmental footprint. So that's why it's important to eat locally, but also eat seasonally, because even then, like getting a mango from somewhere where it's, say, Australia, it's warm right there now. I don't know if they grow mangoes in Australia, but if they do, they're in season. So they would have a lower carbon footprint than eating mangoes grown in Japan that's out of season. Hopefully that makes sense, and I'm gonna dive into that in the future, like I said. Also, food is tricky to talk about when it comes to our environmental footprint because everyone needs food to live. So I think you should focus on other areas of your life. If you can't eat whole foods plant-based, if you can't eat vegan, if you can't eat package-free, do your best. Don't stress about it because the most important thing is getting the nutrients you need and surviving. You can reduce your carbon footprint in a lot of other ways. Don't stress about this too much. So if you have the privilege to change your diet to a more sustainable one, I encourage you to do so. And like I already said, not everyone can be vegan, so I'm not trying to convince everyone to go vegan or anyone to go vegan for that matter. I'm just trying to let you know that you can do your best. I hope that you found some value in this video. I hope that you found this interesting, helpful, inspirational, all the words. If you found any value in this though, I would really appreciate a thumbs up, and I'd really appreciate it if you share this with others as well if you think someone else would find value in this video. I forgot to mention it in the beginning, but if you're new here, I would really appreciate if you hit subscribe. I post new videos every Monday and Thursday Japan Standard Time, which is Sunday and Wednesday in the US, and I talk about all sorts of things, zero waste, but focusing particularly on how to make zero waste, free, easy, and fun for everyone. So if you're into that, hit subscribe. I would really appreciate it. Speaking of hitting subscribe, I am very close, but at the time I'm filming this video is scheduled for April, I think. So I'm filming this way ahead of schedule. At the time that I'm filming this, I'm nearing 2,000 subscribers, and I'm nearing 2,000 followers on Instagram, so go follow me there as well, if you want to. Once the time comes that I hit 2,000 on both platforms, I'm gonna be doing a Q&A. So if you'd like to ask me any sort of questions, leave them down below for the Q&A. Let me know if they're for the Q&A and I'll save them for later. But that's pretty much it. I just want to say thank you guys for all your continued support, liking my videos, watching my videos, all sorts of things like that, and for making it all the way to the end of this video. And until next time, remember that these small changes you make have a big impact in the long run. Bye guys. I also was inspired to make this post. This is a video. Let me see if I can find it. For example, Beyond Meat, their sausages come in a, excuse you, stop flying. 17% of the world's, holy cannoli. They're just doing tricks up there. It takes a lot more food to feed a 1 or 2 town